Hi guys, welcome back to Irish Footy Vlogs. Welcome back to another video. This is the first division season review. Delighted to welcome full team today. Sean, I was going to call you Ian. Keith, we've done it already. Keith Ryan, Ian Ryan, Bray fan, in case people are wondering. And Gavin Woods, of course, who won't be here next year. No comment from anybody. Okay, Gavin, we'll start off with you. Cove Ramblers finished bottom of the league this season on 17 points, 4 wins all season, conceded 78 goals, more than any other team in the league. Started off the season, of course, with Darren Murphy in charge as well, and he obviously left and Shane Keegan came in. Look, I suppose you'd have to say disappointing enough season, Gavin, for Cove, but I do feel since Shane came in, that it's been very much experimental with a view to next season, that finishing bottom, second, bottom ultimately doesn't make a difference to them as such this year.
No, Keith. I suppose, I know it's kind of a phrase that's used a lot about a transition and stuff like that. It can be used a lot, this word transition, and teams going through transitions. But I think Cove, that was probably their issue this year. And I said that about Darren Murphy at the time when he was there and I was done watching games. Like I was saying, you Darren Murphy on the side, you John Meade on the side, you Derek Collin on the side, you John O'Flynn on the side, and 4 of them calling out instructions to the team. There should be one fella calling instructions. And I personally, it's only my opinion, I don't think that works. I think you should just have one man doing the calling, and I just found that a bit strange. But look, that's the way it was with him. I just think probably for Darren Murphy, I just think, and it's no reflection of him as a person. Maybe that job was just too big for him, and I think with Shane Keegan, when he came in, he just probably tried to get the best out of the lads that he, and just try and sort out a formation. Because, I think with Shane, they were playing a 3-5-2, just wasn't suiting them as such, really, with the players they have. They don't have the players for the 3-5-2. So they just kind of changed the system around, went back to a flat 4-4-2. Tried and tested, and I think I think things improved. But there needs to be a huge overhaul there in the squad for next year to try and do something anyway. But they definitely need to improve on next year.
Yeah, it's a very young squad, isn't it? Very young squad, just looking at it there again. And the likes of Pierce Phillips, who was a key midfielder, but he's one of the more experienced midfielders and he's 24, but he missed a lot of games through injury. He played 18 league games, you know what I mean? And the most experienced midfielder is Abbott, who played. But after that, 20-year-olds, 22, 19-year-olds, that's just the midfield area. And I suppose you're going to get inconsistent results in that scenario. And as I said, with Phillips out most of the season, he was a big loss because he was very good the season before.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, Keith, there, we always say it can be a plus to Cove when Cork City move on players, and sometimes they go to Cove. So I suppose then, in a sense, it kind of works against them if you think about it, that you're getting 4 or 5 players from Cork City, so your team is never settled. I suppose it changes every single season. So from that point of view, they got in Phillips, they got in young Carl Eunice came in. They got in a couple of new players. They got an MBO centre half. They're a good player, but I suppose the Shane over this period, when the time is off, I suppose he'll try and settle things down a bit. And I suppose it's not easy to, Keith, in every sense with a team like that that's part-time, and they're not financially, they don't have a lot of money, to be fair. So it's hard to it must be hard to, in general, to get a fella to try and sign up here when, probably, unfortunately, the situations you probably won't be paid. You're doing it for the love of playing soccer, and that's a sad situation in general. So I guess from Shane's point of view, I'd say it's very hard to, it must be hard because it's a guy's livelihood. So if another job comes up doing something else and it's not soccer related, he probably has to think twice about it. So it's probably not easy from that point of view either.
Yeah, Whitmarsh came in obviously from Cork. You kind of mentioned players coming from Cork, and 7 goals in 24 appearances. He's not what you'd call a prolific striker, but he kind of had a few injury problems here and there as well, and he probably played a few games where he wasn't fully right either. But he started the season very well, but then it kind of tailed a little bit, didn't it, for him?
Yeah, it did, Keith. And I suppose when it affects every player when you're changing manager, and like you're changing system too. Basically, they're going from 3-5-2 to a 4-4-2, and I suppose that affected him. And look, maybe when things aren't going your way in every season, things aren't working out for a manager, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and maybe at the time, he probably found it hard to get motivated after he came back from injury. So maybe he just found it a bit tough, and just it took a while for him to get back into it. But there's no doubt about it. Like there's a player in him, and like if once he's motivated and he's fit, right? Like I mean, surely he could increase to maybe 15 or 20 goals. He could get 15 goals for you. Like he's that type of player. But I suppose, as you said, it's just that maybe he needs to get his head down and work hard, and hopefully next season will be a better season for him if he is with Cove.
Yeah, Sean, Athlone Town in the end finished second from bottom in the league, and they finished 7 points above Cove. For a long time, it felt like they were definitely finishing bottom of the league, didn't it? They started the season with Martin Russell, ended the season with Dermot Lennon, who now is actually the manager. He was interim for practically the whole season, but he's been appointed the permanent manager now, if you like. And strange season for them, but they did finish kind of well, didn't they? And one thing about Athlone is they scored a decent amount of goals, which was 44 last season compared to the teams around them. So interesting season for Athlone. Were awful at the start, got a bit better near the end.
Yeah, I mean, it finishes on a high note, even though when you look at it compared to last season, they are slightly worse off because they had a higher finish in 2021. But yeah, as you said, it was disappointing. I'd say, the low point of the season was probably when Martin Russell was sacked, because that was an admission that, the season was a waste, and they were going to have to just gear up for next season. They did have 2 bright spots on the team. Firstly, Thomas Alua, who was the main goal scorer for them, and Adam Lennon on the wing, who came back from UCD. He provided a few goals as well. But they definitely were more dangerous in the second half of the season. I could see that. And I think the turning point for that was the 3-1 win in the El Clasico away at Longford. But Thomas Alua got that really stunning bicycle kick. And they always offered that going forward. But where they struggled is defensively. They were, when I saw them play, they were really badly organised at the back, especially towards the first half of the season. And I think that's ultimately what cost them. Yeah. It doesn't really matter how many goals you score if your defence is so leaky. I think the big problem for Athlone is trying to retain players, especially when the league is now so competitive. Remains to be seen how many of those players are going to be back next season, and that could be the problem for him.
Yeah. Keith, Bray Wanderers obviously this season didn't have the best of seasons, did they? They finished ahead of Athlone, but only 3 points ahead in the end. And one thing, I was looking at them earlier on, obviously Feeney and Lynch were top scorers with 6 goals apiece. Lynch was injured for a lot of the season, wasn't he, as well? But they used 33 players this year, Bray Wanderers, which is just incredible, isn't it? 33 players.
Yeah. Look, that's been Pat Devlin's kind of thing the last couple of years. I know with Cabinteely, the last few years, they've used a lot of players as well. And like 33 players, it just goes to show you that there was never a settled side. I mean, we kicked off the season in the Carlisle. Look, we made what I thought we made in terms of signings were relatively good signings. Like Curtis Bourne was coming in, and we got Hugh Douglas back, who gave a bit of a lift around the place. And there was obviously the Cabinteely players came in, and but Cork City played us off the park that night in the Carlisle 6-0, and then we get down to Waterford, Keith, and even though we only lost 1-0, Waterford really should have won by a couple more that night. And from there on in, I mean, you look at the stats. I think we won 5 games in total, 5 or 6. What, 5?
I think it was 5. 2 seconds. 6.
6. So we beat Athlone, and we beat Cove, we beat Longford, beat Galway away, which was the surprise of the season. Late on, but and then late on, Cove Ramblers absolutely thumped us as well. So, like, all in all, Keith, it was a very disappointing season. As soon as we got to the playoff last season, like I'm not sure when the video is going out, but today the 19th was this time last year we were playing the playoff. So it's a completely different scenario to what it is this season.
14 goals at home this season, Keith, at the Carlisle grounds.
Yeah, very disappointing. Look, you mentioned Darragh Lynch was injured a lot. Darragh wasn't injured a lot at all. He was injured towards the start of the season, and then he just didn't get a look in. He obviously wasn't fancied, and he's out of contract now, and whether he'll be back or not, I don't know. But I'm sure there's a couple of teams that be lined up looking for Darragh next season, because on his day, he's still only a kid, Darragh. He came onto the scene under Gary Cronin and done really, really well for us. But we won't talk about what happened off the field, but on the field, it definitely wasn't anywhere near a success this season. We didn't even get near the playoff positions, never mind the top two. After Cronenborn, I joke, he tipped right to win the league at the start of the season. So, yeah, very disappointing. And but I see progress already in the off-season with the appointment of Ian Ryan, which is a very, very good move. Ian Ryan done really good with Wexford last season under difficult circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we'll talk about again in the future, no doubt. Gavin, Galway United, it feels like they finished third in a 2-horse race in the end, because they were challenging Cork, weren't they, nearly all season, and in the end they kind of fell apart. Ended up finishing third, 4 points behind Waterford, who were a good bit behind them at one point, and again beaten well really by Waterford in the playoffs as well. And in the end, it's fairly disappointing season, you'd have to say, from a Galway and a John Caulfield point of view.
Yeah, Keith, I suppose, at the start of the season, their ambition was to win the league, and I suppose, I would have thought of myself as well at the start. I don't know, did I predict them but we were under predictions early in the season. I don't know, did I predict Galway to win it. But I would have thought that they would have, with John's experience and his second season, especially after last season, what happened to him. I said that they'll go up as champions. So a very up and down season from Keith, and a kind of what's the word? It seems to be one of these things, always a bridesmaid, never a bride with him. He just they don't seem to have it to go up. I think John will be very disappointed in the season himself. It's I suppose that it goes to show when it came to the Waterford game in the playoff that even Sean would say himself that when Waterford scored early, Galway didn't have a plan B to go with it. And I think that was probably Galway's issue all season, when they came up against teams that were going to give them a run at it or attack them, and they didn't have a second plan, or they didn't know how to come at teams, and which would be John Caulfield's style of play anyway, which he loves doing. So John himself would be disappointed. To be interesting to see if he's going to stay or not. But for a team that were up there, when was it? I was saying it there. Was it I remember City had a free week during the summer, and I think Galway had an opportunity to kind of go 4 points clear or something, and it didn't materialize for them. And I think that summed up their season really when it came to it. They bottled it,
I think as well at that point of the season, maybe slightly after, what they did was, it was touch and go with Cork basically, but they brought in a few players. They brought in the likes of Heary and Finnerty, and it felt like they were trying to go for it by bringing in these players, but it might have destabilised them a little bit potentially. Sometimes when you bring in players like that, it destabilises a little bit what you have, you know what I mean? It's a possibility, I think.
Yeah, I suppose we're all surprised with the Heary signing, especially, I suppose we know ourselves that Bastien Heary can be absolutely outstanding, or he can just not be in the game at all. So that was a big surprise. And when he signed, I said that to myself. I said, if John can get him playing, I was saying they're going to go all the way, because he was going to be a huge asset to him. And look, he probably was still an asset to him anyway. It's just that it didn't. it didn't help in a sense of him winning the league, obviously. So I suppose it could have been a sign of a desperate measure, but like to bring him in, I don't know, is he going to stay with him next year or not? But I mean, if he's one player that has abundance of quality, he's a super player. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I think John will look back in the season, and I say this about John as well. Like if you're not playing well for John, like it's kind of one of these stories where he won't really have much interest if you're not going to put in 110%. I always say that about him. If you run through a wall for John, he'll play every single week. And obviously, look, some players maybe just didn't click with himself, with John, and some players, and maybe that was a reason of their downfall.
One player that did run through a wall for them was Stephen Walsh for 16 goals this season, 32 as well. Big surprise him doing that well this season. We all knew him as a left back, so that's something Caulfield can do well at times. Is seems to see something in a player, and they either re-energize them or gets them playing in a different position quite well. And Walsh, I suppose, was the man this year for them, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was superb, to be fair, and like kind of I suppose he reminds me a lot of Marky Sull that played with Cork City, big, strong, powerful, and not afraid to go at defenders. And I suppose, like, as you said there about Johnny, he's very good at doing something like that. Like, to be fair, he done that with Seanie Maguire when he came back to Cork City that time, because he wasn't getting run at Dundalk, and turned him into the player that he turned out to be afterwards. So, obviously it's not to say it's a completely different situation with Galway, but I think if John is staying with Galway, I would be guessing like they need to sit down and kind of do a root and branch up and see what's going on or what went wrong with the squad this year, because with the Comer brothers being involved and money being pumped into the club, like there'll be nothing less than next season, like there'll be nothing less than wanting to win the league. I don't think it's going to go another year where it's going to fall asunder from the need to get their act together for next season. Like, obviously that'll depend if John is staying, and it'll depend on what players he has and if they come to an agreement with the board and spend money. But it's interesting times for Galway.
Absolutely. Sean, Treaty United, another playoff place this season, 5th in the league, FAI Cup semi-finalists. Tommy Barrett doing a fantastic job there again, and a lot of people, including myself, thought they might fall off a little bit after last year's heroics, which can happen. But to be fair, as I said, another playoff place, FAI Cup semi-final, Enda Curran banging in the goals, 14 league goals this season. Fantastic job from Tommy again, and well done, Treaty, I suppose, really.
Yeah, it's fantastic job for a team that at this point is still fully amateur. I think that is changing next season, and they're aiming to go semi-pro. But yeah, I mean, they've had 2 really good seasons. I suppose last season was better in the regard that they finished higher in the league and they came closer to coming through the playoffs. But in every other regard, it's hard to deny the glory of winning a cup quarter final and being very, very close to coming to the FAI Cup final in the second season as a club. Tommy Barrett really is working miracles there to assemble a squad of local players.
Do you think that helps, actually, Sean, the fact that he's been Limerick-based all his career, really?
I think so. I think he obviously demonstrates a great knowledge of the local leagues there, the Limerick and Clare district leagues, because he picked the players very well. And it does help because, nobody else really knows about those leagues. So if there is a good player there, he'll be the first to know about it. So, and then they played a very good brand of football too. Sometimes sometimes it didn't work for them because they got hockeyed. They got hockeyed a few times during the season, a few 4-0s. But they also got a few good results. They won 2-0 in Turner's Cross, and they gave us a scare. They went, I think, 3-1 up against us, and nearly leveled the tie that we thought was dead and buried. So I suppose the only thing I would say is that it looks like there's a few players leaving. Jack Lynch is gone. He'll be a big loss next season, and there'll be certainly clubs circling for some of the bigger players like Enda Curran. So it'd be interesting to see if they can keep that squad together.
Yeah, they would have been probably a little bit disappointed with the Waterford game, particularly the first leg at home, to kind of put them in a situation whereby they were in trouble, big trouble in the second leg. They were kind of nearly gone. I know they did very well to get the result they did or get in the position they did, but ultimately the damage was done in the first leg, you felt there.
Yeah, I mean, the late goal, I mean, we kept pressing in that game, and Sean Guerin's got late own goal there, and that ended up being vital. I think, they'll obviously be disappointed there. But to be fair, on that night, I think the gap in performance was fairly big. So I don't think there was any moment in the game, even the sending off, I don't think really changed the trajectory of the game that much. So, damage done in the first leg, but it was just a case of them not turning up on the night, really.
Keith, Wexford, they had a better season than they normally have, finished 6th, 41 points, 3 points behind Treaty, but they kind of fell away in the end, really. They kind of beat Treaty in the last day when Treaty were already in the playoffs. But overall, you'd have to say it was a good season for Wexford. Ian Ryan did a great job there. Of course, Ian Ryan is yesterday's news now, isn't he, to be fair? But look, he got a good squad together. He got them playing. They were a good team to watch, weren't they, as well? Had some super results in the league as well. And the last number of seasons, they're used to finishing either second or second bottom, but they were nearer the playoffs than, say, nearer the bottom. So, satisfactory enough season?
I don't know, Keith, to be honest, because they were certainly on their way to the playoffs after the halfway stage, or just before the halfway stage. And then Jack Doherty's injury, and we joke and laugh about Jack Doherty a lot, but his injuries seemed to derail their season a little bit, I know there's been a couple of Wexford fans that have said that we don't talk them up enough, but I think we've been fair on Wexford this season. I think they were brilliant for the first half, and then the second half they just seemed to drop off a cliff,
Is that lack of experience, I wonder, Keith, from not being used to challenging for positions like that? I wonder.
I don't know, Keith. I mean, Ian Ryan's our manager, Lachlan Fitzgerald is the assistant manager, and then you've experienced players like Aidan Friel, Vinnie Corcoran in the squad. Luka Lovic has been there, done that with Bray. So they do have a couple of players that have
Dobbs is a bit experienced, isn't he? Really?
Sorry,
even Dobbs is a bit experienced.
Dobbs as well,
Division and stuff. Yeah.
So, they will be disappointed with not challenging Treaty. I mean, we all said it during the season that that game was probably going to be a decider. Unfortunately, it didn't end up like that. But what's good for Wexford is they seem to be building a fan base. I mean, they brought a lot of fans down to Treaty, I know, and it's good to see, because they weren't a well-supported club on the road previously, but they do, and Sean will back me up here. They brought a good few down to the RSC as well, I believe. So, it's good to see, and fingers crossed that. James Keddy for them is a great sign. He'll be a good manager. James he's a quiet man, but coaching wise he's pretty good. He done well with Bray. So, but I don't think I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with where they finish in the end.
Yeah, Aaron Dobbs was actually the top scorer, 9 goals as well, which is relatively decent. Like Davis at 5, the likes of Doherty at 6, so they're spread around a little bit. But would you say those 3 were probably their 3 best players this season, or anyone else stand out for you? Maybe Alex Moody in goal was.
Alex Moody had a good season.
Goalkeeper.
I also thought Luka Lovic. I mean, I'm not being biased here as he's ex-Bray, but I thought he kept them ticking throughout the season, and he broke up play quite a lot for them, which you need again, particularly against the likes of Waterford and stuff. With good players, you need to be able to break them up, not break them up, well, break them up. But I'd be hoping. You mentioned Ian Ryan on to Bray. I'd be hoping Ian might bring a couple of those players with him to the Carlisle. I'm not
that might be the problem for Wexford going forward as well, by the way. But
speaking to a couple of Wexford fans, there seems to be a bit of money going in this season, and they've obviously hired John Godkin, who won the Junior Cup with North End United a couple of years ago. So he's gone in to work on the academy, I think it is. That's, I don't know if that's a positive move or a negative move, but I don't know why Ian Ryan left or whatever. But the club seems to be on the up, which is fantastic, because they have been the Dollrums a couple of years apart from the year they were promoted.
Yeah, I'll stick with you, Keith, for this one. We'll go back to the other guys. But Longford Town finished fourth in the league. You obviously know Gary Cronin has now left the club as well, of course. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was a weird season for Longford, I think, because a lot of people, including myself, felt that they might fall out of the playoffs, that they mightn't quite get there. But they got there. They got there comfortably, to be fair, didn't they, as well? And you know, the likes of Sam Verdon, I think, started the season off very well for them as well. Maybe he slipped a little bit during the season, but they struggle to score goals, and that's kind of, as you mentioned before, it is a Gary Cronin thing as well, where generally you're good defensively and your team struggle to score goals. But, you know, I don't think they were expected, Keith, really to go up. I don't think anyone, with some of the players they lost, Dervin, Arnold Driscoll, amongst others, leaving the club, and a whole host of former Bray Wanderers players, of course, went with Cronin as well. But how would you rate their season overall?
Yeah, the league's a bit of a merry-go-round, isn't it? No, follow the Pied Piper, but yeah.
But Craven was a bad loss through injury, though, wasn't he? He was yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Darren got a bad injury, and you know, was asking a couple of Longford players who were at one of our games whether he'd be back for the playoff, but they're looking at 2023, obviously, for him to come back. I said that Longford might slip out of the playoffs. They were on a bit of a bad run mid-season, and I was like, oh, they're going to fall out here, because Wexford, that was coincided with Wexford's form being good. But you asked me, did Wexford have a successful season? I think Longford will see this as a successful season. You know, they're not up there with the big dogs like Waterford, Cork, Galway in terms of money and stuff like that. So to get a playoff spot, and you know, I know I was talking to a couple of the Longford personnel prior to the Galway game, and they felt confident that they'd get through the tie. And then, Adi Amo came in mid-season and done quite well for them.
8 goals in 13 appearances, pretty good.
If they'd have kept him, would he have scored the goals that propelled Galway to the top? But anyway, Longford, Shane Elworthy had a good season for them. We obviously put Dylan Burnett in the team of the year, a left back. Thought Luke Dennison was quite good. A lot of backline was good, which is typical Cronin team. We already mentioned it. Sam Verdon had a pretty good season, and young Robinson as well. Like I think he was fantastic as well and he's a bit like Luka Lovic. He breaks play up in the midfield, and I like that type of player, you know, who bites. And he replaced. It was almost like he replaced A. Dervin a little bit. You know, A. Dervin done a lot of that for Longford in the last couple of seasons. But yeah, all in all, I think they'll be happy. But the problem now with them, Keith, is obviously Gary Cronin's gone. James Keddy has taken up the Wexford job, so it's another rebuild job, isn't it, for Longford Town? And you're right, Darren Craven, massive loss, and I think he's as big a loss for Longford as Jack Doherty was for Wexford.
And even that, he scored 4 goals in 10 games, and he's not even that type of player as such, which was mad. Yeah. Absolutely. Gavin, Cork City, we better talk about them. Colin Healy, did he exceed expectations this season for you?
I think he did, to be honest, Keith. I wasn't expecting the season that we had, to be honest, which was very surprising. I suppose, like, you know, I was hoping that I didn't think he was going to, you know, get him to be champions in that short space of time, being honest with you. And it wasn't not having to go off him. I just thought it was going to take more rebuilding after the mess from the couple of years before that and over COVID. And especially when he brought through a lot of the young teams that he had brought up from underage. I just didn't think, even with the step up to the first division, I just didn't think that they'd be able to step up, for want of a better word, and show that they'd be champions. So I suppose from that point of view, it was a huge surprise. And I suppose at times, other than probably the last maybe 7 or 8 weeks when they started across the finishing line, you know, a lot of the games they were to be fair, they were super to watch. Very surprising, to be honest with you.
They had a habit, Gavin, of going 2 or 3 up in a lot of the games.
Yeah,
before half time, basically, didn't they?
Yeah, that was the surprising thing with me, and that was like it was fantastic to watch. Obviously,
Good habit.
A good habit.
Yeah, Oh, it was fantastic. Like, to be fair, it was an amazing thing to watch because I wasn't expecting it to happen. And they were just, they were in other games, what they were doing then as well is like that if they go 2 or 3 up, they were comfortable in games. Or else what they do is they'd have a spell where they dominate a game, and then maybe in a 10 or 15 minute spell in the second half, they would just tear teams apart, and it would kill the teams. It would demoralize the team. And it was absolutely, it was to be fair, it was fantastic to watch, and it was a huge surprise to me. Like, it was really impressive, and I have to say it was fantastic. And like, like, other than that, and we're always on about players, but like, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the fans. Like, I mean, the lowest attendance was 2,200, and the highest was something like 6,600 or something. I suppose they were averaging around the 3 or 4 most home games. Like, and the atmosphere when they were playing well, the atmosphere was superb, and like that, I must have it. I must help the players. Like, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, when
not only that, Gavin, I think
wrong,
some of the first division teams, some of them would see that as a shock because they wouldn't be used to that in the first division.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I suppose, like, yeah, like, and I suppose that, like, I've said that anyway with Cork City in general, be it first division or Premier Division. When things go their way, you'll always add 1,000 or 1,500 to the crowd in the cross, and like, I mean, it's so, it's such a boost. Like, it's phenomenal to see it. Like, and when the shed gets going at all, and all of when the shed gets going and there's a big crowd there, like, it makes, like, genuinely, the hair stand up in the back of my neck. It's amazing. Like, and I can't kind of praise the fans enough for coming out this season, and I think that was a huge, like, I do think it was a huge driving force in winning the league as well.
Absolutely, and of course it was built on a foundation of a solid defence. 22 goals conceded last season. We've talked about them before, but particularly Harrington and Gilchrist, I think, really binded that defence together, didn't they? And O'Connor had his moments as well.
Yeah, like, I suppose, like, Harrington I think he had 9 games from the end of the previous season where I suppose McNulty realised that, look, his time was coming to an end as a first choice keeper. And I suppose, Keane Menton was very disappointed with that, obviously.
I was waiting for a comment there. I thought you were going to let me down.
Yeah, no, I know, that's always there. But
you might see him at the KFI Awards tonight.
Yeah, I'd say he'd be hugged.
Mark will be there.
They get I suppose they get presented with finishing up with Cork City if he is there. I'd say I wouldn't surprise me if Keane gets a picture with him. So to be comical, but yeah, but like, to be fair, David's been superb. Like, a big, strong, powerful keeper, amazing distribution of the ball. But I think his love for the club and with his dad been there before, and I suppose, probably before David, to be honest, his dad was probably the best Cork City player, in their history, for want of a better word. He was a super keeper and a great attitude, and I think David's getting that from him. And as you said yourself about Gilchrist, quietly got on with a strong, powerful centre half, great left foot in him, never under pressure with the ball. Scored an odd couple of goals from corners and stuff like that, and very strong. And like, as you said, and Kevin O'Connor, to be fair to him, like, as I said this before,
left back all season, yeah, Gavin.
Yeah, left back all. Sometimes right back, when he decided to go over there for a couple of minutes there, when he decided to maraud up the wing there, every now and again, But the 4-4-2 system with Kevin was super, worked out perfectly for him when he had Coleman and Gilchrist next to him, or if he had Hacken and Gilchrist. It really worked a treat for him because he had Bargary in front of him, and just speed alone, he would just keep giving Bargary the ball, or Keating kept coming short for the ball. So to be fair to Kevin O'Connor, his experience was a huge thing in him going up this year, and it was that alone in itself, like, was fantastic, And I suppose, like, as well, we were talking about players as well, and picking. I suppose, like, when you're kind of looking at players that stand out, 2 other players as well, I think that they quietly got on with things this year were Dara Crowley and Jonas Hakkinen. They're not these players that you're looking at them going, oh, he's unbelievable or whatever. Like, but when they stood in, when Jonas went in centre half with Gilchrist, or Dara Crowley went in right back or right side of midfield, or he went in centre midfield as well. they're nothing. They go in and do their job professionally, great attitude, and I think they were a huge plus as well for us winning the league as well this year. And I believe it or not, there I just got a text there actually. Can you see this? I think City are signing a new player there. Can you see my phone there?
Exclusive. No, I can't see your phone.
Yeah. You see that there?
Yeah.
Louis Britton.
Yeah.
Oh, Cristiano Ronaldo, of course. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, he's coming over there.
I've seen that earlier. He rejected Waterford, so he did.
Yeah, says the high Gav. I'm meeting Colin Healy for a chicken supper at Lennox's at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll sign the contract with Brigado Cristiano. So look,
things are looking up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of new money, we'll move on to Waterford. So, Sean, in fairness though, it's hard to believe now that Ian Morris was actually there at the start of the season. It feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it? And when Morris was there, everyone nearly, including myself anyway, thought that Waterford definitely win the league. He's experienced winning leagues with Shelbourne in the first division, knows what it's about. It didn't quite work out for Ian Morris, and obviously then he moved on. But I suppose at that time, what were your thoughts?
Oh, well, I mean, forget about winning the league at that point. It was, we'd fallen so far behind. I think there was, well, I never really believed it, but we were fifth place, so there was a legitimate risk that we might even fall out of the playoffs, especially when Treaty and Wexford are playing well around us. So it was really dire straits, and then there was rumours that players were being sold off in order to pay the wage bill because the owner had lost interest. And then, of course, we got a new owner in then, and Andy Pilley, in fairness, has been exceptional since he came in. The professionalism really is unmatched to anything I've seen at the club before anyway. The second half of the season obviously was a lot better. It was almost like a carbon copy of the season before last, where the manager at the start of the season ended up getting sacked early on after a poor start. Got a new manager in then, and had a good cup run, made it to a semi-final, lost the playoff final. So eerily similar. But it's kind of hard to be objective about it because the objective was to get promoted and we didn't achieve that. So, it's hard to look at the season as a success, even though we did make it to the cup semi-final, and it looks like that the majority of the squad is going to be back next season. So, it does feel like a missed opportunity. In terms of how we played this season, under Danny Searle, we definitely played better. I'm going to get the negative stuff out of the way first, is that there was 3 carbon copies of games there between Cork, Shelbourne and UCD, where once the wings were battled up, we really found it difficult to break down the defence and scored 1 goal in those 3 games. And really is ultimately, I suppose, why we didn't win the league. But in games where we did play well, particularly the quarter-final against Dundalk, it was a joy to watch, really. I mean, it was fantastic watching Junior Phoenix on the wings, rolling the dough in the middle of the field, and Niall O'Keefe as well. You got Dara Power and Timothy Sobowale going, making runs for fullback. So hopefully we'll see more of that. I think the problem was, and the reason why Danny Searle was so reluctant to make changes, is because we were very light outside the first 11. So hopefully, it seems as though from Andy Pilley's statements at the end of the year that though the majority of the squad is going to be back next season, we're going to look to strengthen, which does appear positive. But it's just so hard to get excited about another season in the first division when it was really, I think we fumbled the opportunity, as opposed to fair play to UCD, who deserved it on the night, but we really fumbled the opportunity.
Do you think, though, it would be more disappointing if there weren't so many positives off the field? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if Richie Forrest was still here and we didn't get promoted, it would be panic stations, because there obviously wasn't a plan B there, and I think we'd be looking at the club being wound up or something like that. Certainly we wouldn't be holding on to our best players. It does appear, it's nice to know there's a plan going forward, and I think with the first division not being as strong next year, we do have a good chance, but it does remain to be seen who we get in.
Yeah, Patterson with 20 goals, obviously, in the league, and Junior with 12. Like, that's 32 league goals, and, the creative as well. That was a massive contribution this season, wasn't it?
No, absolutely. And, I know we've got clubs who are interested in signing those players. If particularly Phoenix has got interest from England, and if he does go, like, I can't hold it against him really. Like, you know, he deserves the opportunity to go and challenge himself. And it does look. It appears. Well, Andy said that it's up to him really. So that to me is sort of a tacit admission that he's probably gone. Junior, on the other hand, looks like he might be back for next season, which might be a boost. It depends who then we'd get in on the other wing. So there's a lot of what ifs, and you know, sort of you don't really know for next season because it does depend on who we get in. But I hope to see that we don't make the same mistakes as last season, that we get a few players in the midfield, because that's really where we were hurt this season. I think one player who stood out for me and was a huge loss was Roland Doe, because he did offer that threat through the middle that we didn't have for the playoffs. He gets the ball down and runs at players, and he stretches defenses as opposed to allowing them to just as opposed to what UCD did, which was just close out the 6-yard area, close out the box, let us have the ball everywhere else on the field, and it worked.
Do you think the little worry which Sean has been with Waterford, that when it comes to the crunch, I don't know, it seems to be a bit of jitters or a bit of something there, doesn't there, when it comes to the crunch?
Yeah, in the past 2 seasons, 2 cup semi-finals and 2 playoff finals, and we've lost all 4 of them. So that's very disappointing, particularly the playoff final, because it's the same opposition, and I still don't think they were as strong as last season. But in ways, it was more comprehensive than last season, because they completely shut us down. And we at least scored in the playoff final before that. The Shelbourne semi-final was a little bit less disappointing, but that was still, again, a far more one-sided game than the one up in Dalymount. I think at least we had opportunities to score up in Dalymount, and we didn't do that at all.
Sean, there's still a tendency, isn't there, in these games for Waterford to go very agriculturally long ball, and I mean very agriculturally, throwing 4 lads into the box and trying to hoof it in from the middle. Yeah,
there is. I mean, that's not the kind of player we have, even though that's the style we refer to. It's not the kind of player we have, so it obviously doesn't work. I don't think I've seen it result in 1 goal this season, not that I remember anyway. I think particularly with Raul Luce, I think to be honest, I think he should have been starting in the playoff final, because Wasim didn't cover himself in glory in that game. But if we'd have got the ball down, and that was another thing in the playoff final, it's the lack of communication, and it goes back to the jitters that come in for the big games. It seemed like there were 11 different players, playing for themselves as opposed to playing for the same team. And it's a tough task. I don't really know how you solve that. It's down to sort of the players themselves and the manager to get things under control for that sort of situation.
Yeah, time will tell. Look, lads, that was brilliant. Thanks for coming on as usual. Fair play to you. Yes, Keith.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Gavin, you met a Waterford fan at the FAI Cup final, I believe. Yeah. And I met him on the train at the Ireland match the other night, and he was just saying he looks forward to the videos every week. So just a shout out. I didn't catch his name, but shout out to him. And he said, Sean, make sure you smile from time to time next season.
Oh, there's one now. Anyway, I met him in the FAI Cup final.
I'm going to make a conceited effort now to be as grumpy and miserable as possible for the whole of next season.
Brilliant.
Just out of spite.
Fair play to you. So thanks for watching at home. Subscribe to the channel. Hit your bell notification button. And thank you again, guys. Brilliant.
Cheers, guys.